Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable Commissioners, I recall Mr. Karamba Ture, Auditor General. Kindly remind him of his.
Good morning, Mr. Ture. Please be reminded that you are still on your oath. Thank you.
Mr. Ture, the National Audit Office, carried out an audit of the Daily Observer.
Yes, ma'am.
At whose request was the audit conducted?
At the request of the President's Office by the Secretary General.
At the request of the Office of the President?
Yes.
When was this?
This was in June 2015.
How was the request made? Was it in writing?
They asked that the observer be audited. So it's just a mere request.
Was it in writing, the request? The request from Office of the President, was it in writing?
Yes, it was in writing.
Can you just give us the date, please, to be specific for the record?
Yeah, the letter was dated 4th June 2015.
It was dated?
4 June 2015.
2015.
Yes.
From the Secretary General, Office of the President?
Yes, ma'am.
Was the audit conducted?
Yes, the audit was conducted.
Okay. Do you have your file?
Yes, I have.
You are required to produce it as well.
Okay.
The file and the report, the audit report?
Yes, and all the correspondence between us and the President's Office.
You have them all?
I have them all, yes.
Did you copy them? Did you copy the file?
I have made photocopies of all the documents of the file.
Okay. Let me have the documents, both the file and the copy. There was an engagement letter between the National Audit Office and the
Daily Observer.
between the National Audit Office and the Observer, Daily Observer. It seemed to have been signed by somebody called the overseer.
Yes, at the time it was Fatkine Job.
Fatou
Fatkine
Kinejo.
Job of the President's Office, yes. He was the one overseeing the Observer Company at the time.
Mr. Chairman, may I apply to have admitted a copy of a file from the National Audit Office? It's number HC 93/131/81. Including the management letter, audits of the Daily Observer Company for the period 1st January 2010 to 31st July 2015.
Yeah, okay, right first. Copy of contents of Yes, I'm asking. Counsel, I think these are copies
Yes.
of the contents of
This
the
file.
National Audit file.
Yes, the file is
What's
here.
the file number, please?
The file number is HC 93/131
Did you get
stroke 80
HC 93
stroke 01. 13. Yes.
Copy of contents of National Audit Office file number HC stroke 93 stroke 131 stroke 01 on Daily Observer Company inspection opened on 6 July 2015. Admitted mark MS261.
Can you give this file to the witness? I just want to ask him some questions on it. Mr. Ture,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
were your findings in brief? What were your findings?
There were a lot of findings, but perhaps I can.
What were the main ones?
Yeah, they tell you the main ones. One of them is our inability to establish the ownership of the Observer Company,
Your inability to?
to establish ownership of the
Okay.
company. We couldn't establish, our audit could not establish ownership of the company.
What do you mean by that? It was a limited liability company, wasn't it?
It wasn't registered. There's no evidence that it was after it was sold. It wasn't registered with the register of companies.
After it was sold.
After it was sold.
Who were the original shareholders?
The original shareholders were Kenneth Y. Best of then Caraba Avenue and Ida B. Drame, then of Wellington Street, Banjul. Ida
Of
B.
where?
Drame, Wellington Street, Banjul.
Okay.
They were the initial owners.
How did you establish that?
Through article of association, memorandum article of association, which we have a copy of in our working paper file.
Okay, we will require you to send us the documents that you used
Okay.
in this process. What else?
Okay. I think we can also say that initially it was registered as a Daily Observer Company in August 1990, but the name was changed in April 1991 to Observer Company, the register of companies. I think we can say that too.
Okay.
During this period too, they were not paying tax to GRA, remitting tax.
Let's go back to the ownership. After the original owners,
Yes.
did you come across any document regarding the change of ownership?
That was the difficulty.
That was the only thing you had, the original owners.
Yeah, that's what we are.
All right. Okay, go on. Okay. Tax liability, you were speaking.
Yeah, tax liabilities. And social security contributions that were not also remitted. Yeah. Staff loans too. There were issues with staff loans that were given.
Okay.
Where the original loans that was previously given wasn't actually liquidated. And also we had unquestionable payments, doubtful payments, payments that were not supported with adequate documentation. Largely these were the main.
There's just something that we would like you to explain. You are the National Audit Office and you audit public institutions.
Yes.
Why were you auditing Daily Observer?
This was on a request, really.
Do
It
you-
was a request from the President's Office for us to audit.
Okay.
It wasn't a government company at the time, but we are asked to audit. It's a request from the President's Office.
So what was the outcome of your audit?
Yeah, like I said, what we recommended. that,
Sorry, Counsel, I think the point we're trying to get is, was it appropriate that you were asked to audit a private firm? We know you audit public institutions. So should you do it at the request of the President's office? That's what we want to know. Are you allowed to do that? Or are you saying you couldn't say no, or what is the rationale behind?
Let me make this. According to the Constitution, any institution where even the government has a minority interest, even if it is 1%, where government has a minority interest, even if it is 1%, we are obliged to, if requested, to carry out audit. So when this request came,
So you're saying it became legitimate for you to audit after the sale?
after the request, yeah. Once this request came,
Did the government have a minority? Are you distinguishing between the government and an individual? Was the government of the Gambia a stakeholder in the company, or was an individual a buyer?
You know, when the request came, we wouldn't have known at the time. We need to establish that first. So once the request of audit came, we need to go and carry out something, the audit. Essentially, that was it. We wouldn't know whether government had interest in the company or not until we go in there to carry out this particular audit.
No. I think the premise of you going there was that you assumed the government bought into it.
Yes. That
So
was
your first due diligence would be, is it government or is it an individual?
Exactly, establishing
And,
the ownership.
and that you could do before even starting the audit.
I agree. But like I said, we were unable to establish ownership of the company going through this process. Even at the end of the audit, we could not establish ownership.
Okay, let's proceed. Sorry.
Now, I note the audit, the period that you audited covered 2010 to from 2010.
2010, yes, to 2015.
Did you look into the change of ownership in terms of the purchase or the sale of the company from the original owners?
We did. Yes, we did, Ma. And we checked with the relevant authorities, the Attorney General Chambers, in terms of this registration. And we obtained evidence from them that it is not registered in their single window registries. We have that document in the file.
Yeah, but the single window registry is very recent. Were you not able to establish who purchased the company from the original owners?
No, we could not establish that because there was no documentary evidence to that effect.
Why was the Office of the President sending people to manage the company? Were you able to establish that?
As I said, at the time, we were, the contact person we were given to was the one overseeing the Daily Observer company from the Office of the President. This was Fat Kinejo. She was the contact person given to us, and she was the one at that time. There was no MD. She was the one supervising the company. So we assume that there is actually a bona fide relationship between.
Was she the only one you dealt with at the Office of the President?
At that level, yes.
She was the one there throughout your audit?
No, not throughout the audit. Management actually changed hands between Momodu Sedi, Pat Malik Fai, and Momodu Sedi again.
Who appointed these people? Who appointed them?
Them.
Yes.
Appointment.
Who appointed them?
Yeah, the appointments will come from the President's office.
The Office of the President?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you make any recommendation?
Yes, we recommended that because of they have flouted so many rules that the company be closed and forfeited to the state and sold by public auction. That was our final recommendation.
It be sold by public auction?
Yes, this was based on the requirements of the laws of the Gambia. We look at what is required of broadcasting corporations, newspaper and broadcasting corporations, and compared with what is happening with Observer, and found that they have not been following any of those rules and regulations. And according to law, once you don't do that, you should be closed. The company should be closed. And so that's what we recommended, based on those points of law. And we have quoted them in the report.
Okay, we'll look at your report. So let me just understand. Your recommendation is premised on the assumption that this company is a public institution?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So it's a company. No. It's premised on the fact that it is a company, a limited liability company, eventually becomes a large.
But if it's a limited liability company and not owned by government or any public institution, the National Audit Office, let me rephrase as a question, would the National Audit Office have the authority or power to make recommendations for the liquidation of a private company that the state or the government has no connection to?
Yeah, I think so our recommendations will largely based on the fact that there is a problem of documentation, that of documentation at the observer end. Most of these documents could not be accessed. You don't have them on the ground. And management could not also explain. Management at the observer end is a little bit turbulent. It's not very static. You can see by the movement of the MDs in and out. And it appears too that there is not a, I'm not sure, they have difficulty in tracing most of the old documents. If we are not there, it is difficult to be able to say what happened before you. So we generally thought that...
Mr. Toure, let me just ask you, did you consider the Daily Observer to be a public enterprise?
That would be difficult. No, we don't consider it as a public enterprise. No.
All right, we'll look at your report. Thank you very much. I have no further questions for the Auditor General. I have no further questions. We'll look at his report.
I'm not asking anything. Very well, thank you. You may go.
Yep. Thank you.
I have returned your file. You may take it with you. Honorable Commissioners, I recall Mr. Alaji Jabang at the instance of Mr. Muhammad Bazi and Mr. Fadi Mazegi for cross-examination, continuation of cross-examination. Just for the record, we were informed that Mr. Alaji Conte traveled and is in Senegal. So we'll try to see how we can reschedule him.
And Mr. Fadi Mazegi. Yes, good morning.
Please be reminded of your oath.
Okay, thanks for reminding.
Mr. Jabang. The reconciliation you did with your African group, MS 220.
Sorry, I don't think I'm getting you well.
Sorry. Ms. Bento, does your document? The account reconciliation, which you confirmed you carried out with your African group, which is
Sorry, what's the number of that exhibit, please?
MS 220.
MS?
MS 220.
Thank you.
You said that was following a meeting, is that correct?
Sorry, your question, please?
You said that was done following a meeting with your African group, is that correct? The reconciliation was done following a meeting with your African group.
No, that's not correct.
Sorry?
No, that's not correct.
I don't hear you.
The reconciliation was done not following a meeting with Euro-African group.
When was the reconciliation done?
It was during the audit.
During the audit.
Yes.
It was done jointly with your African group,
Yes.
and you both signed off on it.
Sorry?
You signed, your signature is on that document, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Did you attend a meeting with Sehu Drame, the then who was acting general manager at the time, sometime in July 2017 with Mr. Mazegi?
Yes, I attended.
Was it agreed, do you recall what was agreed at that meeting?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just didn't get the name of the person whom they met. Sehu Drame, the witness, and there's a name mentioned.
With Mr. Mazegi?
Mazegi.
Yes. Do you recall what was agreed at that meeting?
I will not vividly recall everything, but as I said last time, Mr. Fadi called us in his office to have some discussions with us. And he brought out the issue that, for these exchange rate issues, he wanted us to have a kind of a bargain. He brought up an issue that there was a time when their ship was supposed to dock to discharge fuel at the depot, and this was not honored by the management of the depot. So he claimed foul and said that, okay, if I am to take legal action against the depot, it could cost so much that it's even going to be more than what you people are claiming. And he wanted us to struck a deal to waive that. so he can also waive these charges. So I said to him that the exchange rate issue has been going on for long, and we need you people to settle all your bills using the Ministry of Finance monthly exchange rates.
Yes, Mr. Jaban.
And he says, you know, Mr. Jaban, we are not aware of this. So we are going to start coming this June, we will start. I say no. For now, our financial year starts in April. We are already in June. You have not settled your April bill yet. At least to correct it, start from this April. Started from April, so that at least we have a clean record of this financial year we have just entered in. So he signed a document between him and Mr. Sehu Drame, the details of which I don't remember. I don't recall right now, but if I see the document, I'll be able to say, yes, this is it.
Mr. Jaban, take a look at this document and tell me if this is the document that was signed by Mr. Mazegi and Mr. Sehu Drame.
Is it in evidence?
No.
Is it in evidence?
No, ma'am.
So following this meeting,
Wait.
That's what we have. Take that off. It's not part of it. The attachment is not. There was no attachment. It's an error. Give me the document back. Mr. Jabang, is that the document you're referring to? Is that the document you're referring to?
I'm having difficulty reading it.
Do you want me to read it to you?
Yes.
Can I have the document? It's from Euro African Group to Mr. Sehu Drame. and it's dated the 12th of July 2017. And the subject is resolution of our disputes as of the 12th of July 2017. Dear Sir, following our meeting earlier today, at which we highlighted our recent disputes, we agreed that given that Euro-African Group Limited, through its shareholder or directors, has interest in the success of GAM Petroleum, being holders
Could you
of
kindly raise your voice, please?
Can you hear me?
No.
Following our meeting earlier today, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Following our meeting earlier today, at which we highlighted our recent disputes, we agreed that given that Eagle, through its shareholder or directors, has interest in the success of GAM Petroleum, being holders of in total 42% of shares, it was in all our interests to settle our disputes amicably without resorting to litigation. Did you hear that?
Without?
Resorting to litigation. At the meeting, we agreed as follows. 1. Given that our disputes are as a result of matters which arose during the tenure of the General Manager and not your recent appointment as acting GM, we have agreed that our disputes and claims are fully waived as of the 12th of July 2017.
Sorry, we have agreed what?
That our disputes and claims are fully waived as of the 12th of July 2017. 2. Eagle shall waive its claim of the sum of $47,000 as stated in its last correspondence to you via email sent on the 27th day of June 2017 from its lawyer Ida D. Drame and Associates. At the same time, GAM Petroleum shall withdraw its letter dated 3rd July 2017 in reply to the sent email, which letter was not appropriately written from the acting general manager to Eagle as an affiliated shareholder. The throughput fees of all uplifts from Eagle as of the 1st of April 2017 will be settled by Eagle on the payment date at the exchange rate stipulated in the price structure published by Ministry of Foreign and Economic Affairs for the month which the uplift took place. Kindly send your acknowledgement in writing by signing the copy of this letter as your agreement to what we had discussed for our records, so that we will forge a positive way forward henceforth. It was signed by Fadi Mazegi, and there's an acknowledgement and receipt.
Sorry?
And there's an acknowledgement and receipt at the bottom, which says, I, Sehu Drame, Acting General Manager, acknowledge receipt of this letter and confirm and accept that the contents of this letter was as discussed and agreed on the said date. And he signed it. Do you recall whether this is what was agreed and signed?
I wouldn't recall 100%, but I know on that very day
Something was signed.
something was signed, yes.
Can you recognize Mr. Sehu's signature?
Yes, it's Sehu's signature.
Hold it, hold it. May we have that letter, please? We're getting confused now.
Yeah, this signature looks like that of Mr. Sehu Drame.
Can you confirm that's the letter that was signed?
Since it's not an original document, I will not be able to say more certainly that this is it, but it looks very much like his signature.
Sorry? It looks very much like.
His signature.
I have the document back. Mr. Jabang, validation of checks at GAM Petroleum required 2 signatures, is that not correct?
Sorry?
Validation of checks issued by GAM Petroleum required 2 signatures, is that not correct?
When you say validation of check,
Checks.
are you referring to drawing of check and signing
Yes,
or the processes?
no. Drawing of checks and signing required 2 signatures, is that not correct?
That's correct.
Okay. At the time you were there, the signatories were whom? Do you recall?
Sorry?
When you were finance manager, who were the signatories to the account?
It was the former general manager, Mr. Michael Giradin, and myself, and the former director of GNPC, Mr. Mohamed Baji.
Okay.
And later, when the general manager left, he was replaced by Mr. Drame, and he became a signatory. So at the time I was leaving, it was Mr. Drame, myself, and I think, yeah, it was Mr. Drame and myself.
Okay. The payments made to APRC were signed by yourself and Mr. Gerardin, is that correct, the former general manager? The checks.
There are several payments that have been made out to them. Yes, some of them I signed, some of them, I now recall, he countersigned with Mr. Simon Victor Paul.
Sorry?
He signed it with Mr. Simon Cole, who was serving as an administrator at that time.
Okay. You stated here that the payment that was made to APRC, you sought approval from one of the shareholders, Mr. Baji, is that correct?
No, I don't think I started that before, that I sought approval from
Okay,
one of the
you
shareholders.
brought it to his attention before you made the final payment.
Which payment in particular? So I can be specific.
The 1 point. The final payment you made to APRC.
The amount, please.
Okay. I believe it was 1.3 million, 2.7 million,
Sorry?
2.7 million, 2.7 million.
I don't recall that figure.
You don't recall the figure?
No, 2.7 now.
You testified that you went to Mr. Baji,
You went to
Mr. Baji, the former director, when you were here on the last date. You went to Mr. Baji before that final payment was issued. You don't recall saying that?
No. I remember we made a payment of 3.7 million to the APRC. And prior to this, there was a board meeting. In this board meeting, we were reviewing the budget, and they saw a 5 million in the budget for donations.
Yeah, Mr. Jabang, you already testified to that.
Yes, I want to bring the whole story.
The story is before the commission. I'm asking you a specific question, which was you stated that you went to Mr. Baji before that final payment was made. You're saying you did not say that.
No, I did not see Mr. Baji for this transaction to happen. It was the general manager who came to my office and mentioned that following the board meeting, that whatever is left on the donation, we have to cut out everything and pay it to the office of the vice president. Initially, that was the plan. So I asked him, is this approved by the board? He said, yes, Graham just called me that we have to go ahead. And he came back later, are you ready? I said, no, not yet. Then he insists I have to draw it. And that's the time I wrote something for him to sign or to authorize for this payment to happen. So I gave him the document. He authorized that we pay this amount to APRC, which we did, but in General Sol Baji's office instead of the Vice President's office.
Mr. Jabang, you're aware that the board had given management a $300,000 limit.
Sorry?
You're aware the board had given management a $300,000 limit for donations. Are you aware of that?
This is, yes, I'm aware, but there are two things.
Now, Mr. Jabang,
I think the witness wants to explain.
Now,
it was a simple question of whether he was aware or not. He's answered. It doesn't require any further explanation.
no,
Mr. Jabang,
I'll qualify that statement why I say yes. This 5 million, where the budget where the 5 million was mentioned, the limit was not set at that time. Where we paid the 3.7 million from, the limit was not set to 300,000. You are referring to a different budget.
Mr. Jabang, the minutes of 7th the minutes of 21st day of April 2016, which forms part of MS 137.
Yeah, but I'm here.
Clearly stated that the budget for donations was 300,000. In fact, they queried the fact that the initial budget that you had put, the initial figure you had put in the budget for donations was excessively high. And it was at that meeting reduced to 300,000.
And this is why I'm clarifying to you that there are two budgets concerned. You are referring to 2016, and this 3.7 was paid from the 2017 budget. Yes, 2016-2017.
Mr. Jabang, the 3.7 could not have been paid from the 2016-2017 budget because the payment was made in December 2016.
Yes.
So it was made from the budget which was discussed at the meeting of April 2016. And it is clearly stated in the minutes of that meeting, which is before the commission in MS 137.
I never have the privilege of having the board minutes,
It's here.
but
You can look at the minutes.
the issue is when this 5 million thing was brought in, they advised, the board advised, that whatever is left from this 5 million, please, we have to pay that out as a whole sum to the APRC. I don't know whether the minutes capture that, but that was it. And following that is when the instruction came that we have to pay any remaining amount from that to pay to the APRC. If it was the case that...
Mr. Jabang.
Excuse me. If it was the case that it was 300,000, why would they, knowing that the 5 million is what is in the budget, why would they go ahead and say, okay, whatever remains, please cut it out and pay it to APRC, which is 3.7 million?
Mr. Jabang, all the minutes here, which are in MS 137, there is no reference to donation to APRC. In fact, I am putting it to you that the reason the former GM was suspended and issued with disciplinary hearing, and one of the reasons you were also issued with disciplinary hearing was because of that payment. And you're aware the former GM was suspended and issued with disciplinary hearing because of that payment. Are you not aware of that?
I am aware of his suspension.
Therefore,
but,
I am saying to you...
I am not privileged to what they have written to cause his suspension. In fact, it's two boards involved. The former board that gave this authorization is different from the board that suspended him.
Mr. Jabang, there is one board. It's a continuing board. Whether the members change now and again, it's a board. None of the board members resigned prior to that and were reinstated. That is what I am saying to you. And the minutes, which are before the commission, MS 137, make no reference to payment of a donation to APRC.
Maybe it's deliberately left out, but that was it. I could recall even during that meeting, one of the board members, who was a former director of GNPC, says, what we do, and he was referring to the chairman, he said what they do at their end is that they allocate a specific budget for the big man. That's how he said it. And that they will cut it once and give it out as one donation, and not to be given separate small donations here and there. And based on this advice, that the chairman says, okay, so what you have to do is now stop giving donations in bits and pieces. Whatever is left, cut it out and pay it out to them. So I was in my office when the general manager came 2 or 3 days later, something like that, to say we have to pay a check out to the office of the vice president. I said, what check is this? He said, we're going to make a donation, and then GRTS is going to be there. We're going to do presentation for this check. I said, has the board chairman approved this? He says, yes, Mr. Graham just called me for us to go ahead. And because he's saying things verbally, I made him to sign a document where he authorized for this payment to happen.
Mr. Jabang, you have changed your testimony from the previous date to this date. What you are saying is not the truth.
As far as I'm concerned, it's the truth. that I am speaking.
Mr. Jabang, it is correct, is it not, you were terminated following disciplinary hearing?
Sorry?
You were terminated by GP following disciplinary hearing.
I was terminated by?
GP.
Yes. According to,
Is it correct, is it not, that some of the issues raised at your hearing was your failure to make known to the auditors
Sorry,
that
can you say that again, please?
your failure to make known to the auditors,
Failure to?
make known to auditors that 2.9 million was owed to Euro-African Group as at 31st March 2017. And also, you had failed to remit payee tax for expatriates from the date you took office to April 2017. Is that correct or not?
Thanks for the question. But
Is that
again,
correct?
excuse me, I would not like to answer this question.
Is that correct? Yes or no?
I would not like to answer this question.
You don't want to answer.
The reason is, I'm not the subject matter here. And personally, I believe whatever has been written to me as their justification to terminate me is not fair to me. Even if they have written that, I don't want to discuss that. This is, for me, as far as I'm concerned, this is not the platform to discuss those issues because I am not the subject matter here.
Mr. Jabang, the way you carried out your duties becomes a subject matter before the Commission, having regard to the fact that you have made statements to this Commission that certain matters, certain information was not provided to you by EGO when you took over office. I am putting these questions to you for you to answer. You have said you are not going to answer. The Commission will take note. My final question to you is, Mr. Jabang, the records for GAM Petroleum, which were with Euro-African Group at the time you took office in June 2015, were made available to you, but you chose not to collect same, and you also chose not to do a proper handing over with Euro-African Group.
You've brought this during our last session.
Yes or no?
You brought
can
this
explain
issue,
after.
and I have answered you very well. I don't know why it's coming up again, but I have answered this question previously. You've asked me twice in the last session the same
Mr.
question,
Jabang,
and I gave my answers.
I am asking you again. You can answer yes,
sorry,
or you can
Mr.
answer
Chairman.
no.
To say that
Council is not, in my submission, at liberty to ask the same question again. She's not denying that she asked the question, so she cannot ask it again. It's cross-examination. There's finality of answers in cross-examination.
Mr. Jabang, I'm putting it to you that you chose not to collect the documents from your African Group. Yes or no?
I'm putting it to you again and again, and for the third time now.
You don't put.
I'm sorry.
You don't put anything to council.
I'm sorry, I withdraw that. Please, I'm saying it again, that is not true.
That is all.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify some of the testimony of the witness. Mr. Jabang, in relation to APRC checks and the signing of them, you mentioned the name. I didn't quite catch the name. You said I signed and some with, you signed some with a, did you mention Simon? The name Simon? You signed checks with who? Whom did you sign checks with during the period Geraldine was general manager?
Sorry, I did not get you clearly.
Okay, let me just ask you. With whom did you sign? Who were the signatories to the accounts of Gum Petroleum when Michael Geraldine was general manager?
That's correct.
Who were the signatories?
I was a signatory. Mr. Michael Geraldine was a signatory, and Mr. Baji of GNPC was a signatory.
Okay.
So one Baji left. We also had a depot administrator called Mr. Simon Cole. Cole, C-O-L-E.
Okay.
So he also became a signatory to the account. So some of the payments that were made to the APRC were co-signed with Mr. Cole, whilst Michael is the principal signatory.
Do you know why Michael Geraldine was suspended?
No, I have no clear indication. I only know, but I was not privileged to see any document stating the reasons why he was suspended.
Did he attend, do you know whether he attended any disciplinary hearing?
No, no idea.
No idea. Okay. That's all for the witness.
Thank you, Mr. Jaban. You may go.
Thank you.
Honorable Commissioners, I recall Mr. Baba Fatajo for continuation of cross-examination at the instance of Mr. Muhammad Bazi and Mr. Fade Mazege.
Okay. Witness.
For the record, Mrs. Ventura, I haven't started cross-examining him.
Witness number. No, did you say you have no questions for Baba Fatajo?
I said I haven't started. It's not for continuation. It's for cross-examination. I haven't started cross-examining Mr. Fatajo.
Oh, very well.
All right,
I
okay.
correct that.
He's coming.
Chairman, please be reminded that you are still on your oath.
Yes, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Mr. Fatajo. You were issued with a notice to produce certain documents relating to tenders and evaluations and minutes of the evaluation committees. Do you have them with you?
No, unfortunately, because I am on leave, I went for a Hajj. I just received the notice yesterday, but our team are working on it because some of the documents that have been asked we are not provided. So they are still working on it.
Sorry, we didn't get the witness's answer. What is your answer?
I said, I mean, the volume of documents being asked such that, I mean, they have not been able to put together everything. In fact, I'm on leave. I just came from the provinces yesterday when I was called in the evening that I should report.
Very well. But the Commission issued a notice to you on the 19th of July to your office.
Unfortunately, I was on Hajj and I'm still on leave, so I was not privy to that notice.
Mr. Fatajo, not to belabor the point, it's an office. It is not restricted to you. The documents could have been made available. Anyway, we can proceed.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I would like to state that the NAWEC legal officer did write to us to explain that it would take time for them to compile the documents requested by Mr. Muhammad Bazi and Fadima Zegi. This covers the period 2002 to 2015, and they are trying to compile the documents. And my learned friend, Mrs. Andrews, was informed by us that of this difficulty that NAWEC had in collecting all these documents.
Well, so it seems to me, from what I've heard from you and the witness, that the witness is not ready right now to be cross-examined. Is that the case?
This witness gave evidence, and the documents requested are documents on which he did not give any evidence. But otherwise, he gives us extensive evidence. I assume that he was being called to be cross-examined on the evidence that he has already given. But these documents are new documents that are being requested by counsel. So in my understanding, the witness is available to be cross-examined on all the evidence that he has given. And of course, counsel should be at liberty to recall another witness or this witness if she wants to tender these documents once they are available.
Yeah. Well, Mrs. Andrews, you've heard. What do you want to do right now?
I will ask some questions, but with respect, Mr. Chairman, the documents I have requested are pertinent to the evidence the witness gave. He made reference to bidding documents and that GTG obtained certain contracts improperly. So the request for the evaluation and bid documents are related to his evidence and are not new. He didn't tender anything when he made those statements, and I wish to see those documents to contradict or otherwise confirm what he has said. So contrary to council's submission, I am not asking for they're new documents, but they're not on new matters. They're related to his testimony. In any event, I can ask him a few questions now, not to waste time, given the commission has time limitations. So we can proceed.
Well, carry on then.
Thank you. Mr. Fatajo, can you confirm the period you were at, the period you have been at NAWEC, given you have testified that there was a period you were not at NAWEC.
Well, I started with NAWEC in 1993 up to 2013 when I was relieved of my duties and then reappointed as managing director in March 2017.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may intervene. I'd just like to show honorable commissioners the documents requested by my learned friend, and maybe so that we can make progress. My learned friend has requested documents, 6 categories of documents, and the first one is tenders, local and international, between the period 2002 to 2015. So these are all tenders of NAWEC. These are, what we understand from NAWEC's council is that these are a lot of documents. So if my learned friend can be more precise for the benefit of the witness, are they interested in documents concerning GTG or Global Electric Group or related companies, or all tenders, local and international, whether it concerned her clients or not? And the commissioners will also see 2 bids, local and international, between the period 2002 to 2015. So these are really...
Sorry, I think with regard to one, you posed a question.
Yes, and if you look at the rest of the documents, they are at
No,
large.
I want to ask
Yeah, they are at large. So
counsel on the other side whether she has an answer to that question.
Mr. Chairman, they're related to all tenders, not necessarily restricted to those of GTG. And the reason being, the witness and that of Mr. Conte have testified before this commission that GTG was given contracts which did not follow due process, or were awarded contracts because at the time they were in management and had access to evaluation committees and so forth. I am requesting these documents to show how the process was. Stating something with no validation does not make it a fact. The only way we can establish what the witnesses have said is to see the bids, the tenders or the bids and the opening results and how they were evaluated. I do not believe this request is onerous or too much, given the information or given the facts the witnesses have stated before the commission.
Very well, lead counsel. Can you give us number 2 then on the list?
Mr. Chairman, there has to be some, at least, precision to guide the witness or NAWEC. Because if NAWEC is being required to produce all tenders for the period of 13 years of all contracts, whether it concerns this witness or not, whether it's for furniture or for electricity or for water, and the bids also, and the bid opening results, and the evaluation committee minutes, and the minutes of evaluation, and letters of award. This is an enormous amount of paper. And NAWEC has made it clear, the legal officer has made it clear, that this will take a lot of time for them to compile. We have a mandate, and we have served with the clients of my learned friend, both Mr. Muhammad Bazi and Mr. Fadi Mazegi, a notice outlining the issues that concern them. I think, in all fairness, this request or notice to produce documents cannot be at large. They must be guided by the mandate of this commission, and they must be relevant to the proceedings before this commission. Otherwise, this will take over a month to compile, and it will be an enormous amount of documentation for anyone to go through. So I think my learned friend ought to be more precise as to what information she's looking at, in connection to what, so that we limit the time NAWEC will have to spend in compiling this document, and we limit the number of resources NAWEC would have to allocate in compiling this document.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold it. So, hold it. So, we have dealt with one on the list, and now you have dealt with two.
Yes. The 3, 4, 5, and 6 would be related to the tenders and the bids.
Okay.
Although I'm not quite certain, in fact, what's the difference between the tenders and the bids, because they seem to be the same thing. But NAWEC is a big institution. It deals with many various things. It deals with water, it deals with electricity, it deals with sewage. And I'm sure it deals with procurement generally for administrative purposes. So the request should be narrowed. If it's, for instance, for electricity contracts or water contracts, or what sort of contracts which of the sectors is my learned friend interested in? But this seems to be a request for NAWEC to trawl through all their archives and bring all the documents that they have relating to procurement. I think that it's an unfair request, and in fact, it will just waste our time, with respect to my learned friend.
Yes, Mrs. Andrews, what do you have to say to that?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's disingenuous of Council to say it's an unfair request, having regard to the fact that the notice to my clients does not even state what the issue is that my client has to answer to. It broadly states NAWEC. It hasn't specified any specific or particularized any matter my client should answer, or my clients should answer. Having that in mind, the only way my clients can answer is against comments or statements witnesses have made before the Commission. Therefore, NAWEC witnesses, including Alaji Conte, have been here stated that evaluations were not done properly, that the awards that were given to my clients were irregular. The only way we can contradict that is by seeing the awards given to other persons. What was the process of awards? I have asked here what the process of awards were on tenders. That is the only way we can verify those statements. So I am at a loss as to what Council's objection is. The purpose of these hearings is for the facts to be made available to the commissioners, so in evaluating what is before the commissioners, they can make a fair judgment. Obviously, my clients' requests are only related to electricity and water. They have no evidence has been led or shown that they dealt in sewage or anything to that effect. So therefore, it is limited in its request as it stands. GTG never dealt with sewage. It's in relation to electricity and to water. And NAWEC cannot say between 2002 and 2015 they've issued 30 contracts. That is not correct. The numbers are not huge. This request was made on the 18th of July 2018. It was forwarded to NAWEC on the 19th of July 2018. We are the 6th of September 2018, and it has not been produced. If they cannot produce it, they can say they cannot produce it. We will move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At least we've made some progress. Now we know it's only limited to electricity and water. Is it limited to contracts that Mr. Muhammad Bazi and Mr. Fadi Mazegi group of companies were
No, it is not limited
with?
to those contracts. It is contracts in general. I would like to look at them and make comparisons.
Well, now I think we'll just have to give this ruling Yeah. It is clear that in this commission, it is our desire to be as fair as possible. On the other hand, all parties concerned must make requests that are reasonable. Now, I see before me notice to produce documents relating to NAWEC, because I see dash NAWEC. And then take notice that the above mentioned witness is hereby required to produce and show to the Commission all books, papers, letters, copies of letters, and other writings and documents in his custody, possession, or power, containing any entry, memorandum, or minute relating to the matters in question in this commission. Now, what I've just read, that's quite normal in the law, even in the courts. That's how they put it. However, the document goes further to say, and particularly, now, tenders, local and international, between the period 2002 and 2015. Now, that is extremely wide. During the conversation here, you have stated that